"What?" he shouted indistinctly. "By God!"
"I know," said Mrs. Halkett Hackett. "Sad, isn't it?"
"Sad? Bloody outrage! What?"
His bloodshot eyes goggled at his wife.
"He said he'd bring you home."
"He didn't do so."
"When did you come home?"
"I didn't notice. Late."
"Alone?"
Her face was white, but she looked steadily at him. "Yes," she said. "Don't be a fool." Donald Potter read the headlines over and over again. He was shivering as if he had a rigor. In the next room, somebody yawned horribly. "Wits, come here!" "What's wrong?" Captain Withers, clad in an orange silk dressing gown, appeared in the doorway. "Look here." Captain Withers took the newspaper and began to read. Donald watched him. "Dead," said Donald. "Uncle Bunch. Dead." Withers glanced at him and returned to the paper. Presently he began to whistle through his teeth. Lady Mildred Potter turned upon Alleyn, a face streaming with tears. "But who could have wanted to hurt Bunchy, Roderick? He hadn't an enemy in the world." "He must have had one, Mildred," said Alleyn. "I'm afraid I shall have to ask you to let me look at Bunchy's papers and so on." "I'm sure," said Lady Mildred, "he would have preferred you to anyone else, Roderick." "I shan't attempt the impertinence of condoling phrases. But I tell you this, Mildred, if it takes me the rest of my life, and if I have to do the killing myself, I'll get this murderer and see him suffer for it." He made a grimace. "Good Lord, what a speech! Bunchy would have laughed at it." It's a curious thing that when one speaks from the heart, it is invariably in the worst of taste. Sir Daniel Davidson sat thinking. The paper said that the police wished to establish the identity of the second fare. Naturally, since he was obviously the murderer. That meant the police would get statements from everyone who left the house about the same time as Lord Robert. The last thing in the world that Sir Daniel wanted was to appear as a principal witness at the inquest. That sort of publicity did a fashionable physician no good. On the other hand, he would look extremely undignified if they found out that he was one of the last to leave and had not come forward to say so. It might even look suspicious. Sir Daniel swore picturesquely in French, reached for his telephone, and dialed. Colombo Dmitri drew the attention of his confidential servant to the headlines. "What a tragedy," he said. "I must have been almost the last person to speak with him. He was a charming personality. It would be a pleasant gesture for us to send flowers. Remind me of it. In the meantime, if you please, no gossip. In respect of malicious tittle-tattle, our firm is in the well-known position of Caesar's wife." His servant's face wore a puzzled expression. "She did not appear in gossip columns," explained Dmitri. Miss Harris finished her cup of tea, but her bread and butter remained untasted. When Lady Carados asked Miss Harris if she would like to come to the ball, she had never for a moment expected to dance at it. She had expected to spend a gratifying but lonely night watching the fruits of her own labours. Her expectations had been realised, until the moment when Lord Robert asked her to dance, and from then onwards Miss Harris had known a sort of respectable rapture. How charming he had been, making her laugh a great deal, and feel like a human young woman of 30, and not a dependent young lady of no age at all. And now here he was, murdered. Miss Harris was so upset that she could not eat her breakfast. Alleyn sat at Lord Robert's desk and telephoned to Marston House. He was answered by one of his own men. "Is Mr. Fox there, Bailey?" "Yes, sir, he's upstairs. I'll just tell him." Alleyn waited. Before him on the desk was a small fat notebook, and upon the opened page he read again in Lord Robert's finicky writing the notes he had made on his case. Fox's voice came through. "Hello, sir." "Hello, Fox. Have you seen the room where he telephoned to me?" "Yes, it's a room on the top landing. One of Dimitri's waiters saw him go in. The room hasn't been touched." "Is Dmitri there?" "No." "Get him, Fox.
I'll see him at the yard at 12 o'clock. Tell Bailey to go all over the telephone room for Prince. We've got to find out who interrupted that call to me at the yard. And Fox, can you come round here? I'd like a word."
Alleyn hung up the receiver. He looked again at the document he found in Lord Robert's desk. It was his will, a very simple will. After 1 or 2 legacies, he left all his possessions and the life interest on £40,000 to his sister, Lady Mildred Potter, to revert to her son on her death, and the remainder of his estate, £20,000, to that same son, his nephew, Donald Potter. The will was dated January the 1st of that year. His good deed for the new year, thought Alleyn. "Good morning," said a voice from the doorway. He swung round in his chair and saw Agatha Troy. She was dressed in green and had a little velvet cap on her dark head. "I came to see if there was anything I could do for Mildred. She asked me to see if you had everything you wanted. If you have, I won't interrupt." "Please," said Alleyn. "Could you not go just for a second?" "What is it?" "Nothing. I mean, I've no excuse for asking you to stay. Unless, if you will forgive me, the excuse of wanting to look at you and listen for a moment to your voice." He held up his hand. "No more than that. You like Bunchy, and so did I." "A few hours ago," said Troy, "I was dancing with him." "Few hours ago." He repeated her words slowly. "At 3:30 this morning. A taxi stopped outside this gate and a quaint figure in a cloak and wide-brimmed hat got out. This figure waved a gloved hand and called to the driver in a shrill voice, 63 Jobbers Row, Queen's Gate, and then— What? Did the figure run like a grotesque with flapping cloak towards the river to be swallowed up in vapour? Or did it walk off sedately into Chelsea? And where are Bunchy's cloak and hat, Troy? Where are they? Can I allow myself a few minutes to unload my mind, if you will let me? I've done that before once, haven't I?" "Yes," murmured Troy. "Once. There's nobody in the world who can listen as you can." "Well, the taxi driver brought Bunchy to the yard at 4 this morning, saying he was murdered. He picked Bunchy up at 3:30, some 200 yards from the doors of Marsden House. As the taximan drove towards Bunchy, he saw another figure in an overcoat and top hat loom through the mist and stand beside him. They appeared to speak together. The 2 men got into the taxi. The cabby never had a clear view of the second man. Before the door was slammed, the cabby heard Bunchy say, 'You can take him on.' The cabby drove to Cheney Walk. He stopped here at Bunchy's gate, and in a few moments Lord Robert, as he supposed him to be, got out and slammed the door. A voice squeaked through a muffler, 63 Jobbers Row, Queen's Gate, and the cabby drove away. He arrived at Jobbers Row 10 minutes later, waited for his fare to get out, and at last got out himself and opened the door. He found Bunchy." Alleyn looked gravely at Troy's white face. She said, "What had been done to Bunchy?" "We think he was struck on the temple, stunned and then suffocated," said Alleyn. "We shall know more when the doctors have finished. He was struck with something that had an edge, about as sharp as the back of a thick knife blade." "Did he suffer?" "Hardly at all. He wouldn't have known what happened." "His heart was weak," said Troy suddenly. "Mildred told me the other day. She tried to persuade him to see a specialist." "I wonder," said Alleyn, "if that made it easier for both of them. Has Donald come in?" "Not yet." "Did you see him at the dance?" "Yes, he danced a lot with Bridgie O'Brien." "Did he stay until the end, do you know?" "I didn't stay till the end myself. Mildred and I left at 1:30. "Did you see much of Bunchy, please?" Troy sat on the edge of the desk and pulled off her cap. The sun came through the window and dappled her short dark hair with blue lights. Alleyn wondered if he would ever recover from the love of her. "There was nothing when we danced except— Yes, we collided once with another couple. Mrs. Halkett Hackett was dancing with a tall, coarse-looking man. Bunchy apologized before he saw who they were. Then we swung round and he saw them. I felt his hand tighten suddenly, and I looked over his shoulder at them. The man's face had gone quite pale, and Mrs. Halkett Hackett looked very odd, frightened. I asked Bunchy who the man was, and he said, fella called Withers, in a frozen little voice. I said, "Don't you like him?" and he said, "Not much, my dear," and then began to talk about something else.
Interesting. Anything more?
Later on, Bunchy and I went to Chaperone's Corner. Your mother was there. Mrs. Halkett Hackett came up with her husband, and then the girl she's bringing out arrived with that old ass Carados. The girl had toothache, she said, but I'm afraid the wretched child was really not having a great success. General Halkett Hackett said he'd take the girl home, and Bunchy offered to take Mrs. Halkett Hackett home later on. The General thanked him, but she looked extraordinarily put out and seemed to me to avoid answering. There was one other thing. Evelyn Carados seemed very upset too, nothing to do with Bunchy. She looked ill. She kept clutching a great fat bag in her lap. Bunchy's hand touched Evelyn's bag, and she started as if he'd hurt her, and her fingers tightened. I could see them now, white, with highlights on the knuckles, dug into the gold stuff of the bag. I thought I'd like to paint them and call the thing Hands of a Frightened Woman. And then sometime after supper, when I danced again with Bunchy, I sat out with him in the ballroom. We were talking away when he suddenly stopped dead and stared over my shoulder. I turned and saw he was looking at Evelyn Carados. There was nothing much to stare at. Dmitri was giving her back that bag. I suppose she'd left it somewhere. What's the matter? That great fat bag you had noticed earlier. Yes, but it wasn't so fat this time, said Troy. It was quite limp and flat. Mildred came up and we left soon after that. I'm afraid that's all.
Afraid? Troy, you don't know what an important person you are.
Don't I? She looked at him with an air of bewildered friendliness, and at once his whole face was lit up by his fierce awareness of her. Troy's eyes suddenly filled with tears. She reached out her hand and touched him. "I'll go," she said. "So sorry." She went without another word.
Detective Inspector Fox arrived, looking solid and respectable. "Good morning, sir," said Fox. "Hello, Fox. I found Lord Robert's notes on the blackmail case. There they are." Fox took the little notebook in his enormous fist. "Yes," he said when he had finished. "Well, now, that puts this Mr. Dmitri in a very unfavourable light." "See here," said Alleyn. "We've got to get the man or woman who overheard that call. What have you done?" "Our chaps arrived at Marsden House a quarter of an hour after the taxi got to the yard. Dmitri had left the house, but our chaps telephoned him at his flat to make sure he was there, and sent a plainclothes man round to watch it. They took statements from the men Dmitri had left to clear up, and we've located the room where Lord Robert rang you up and sealed it. The men's cloakroom attendant was still there, managed to recollect most of the men who were the last to go, and I've got a list, likely incomplete, of the guests who left alone about the same time as Lord Robert." Fox handed a notebook to Alleyn, who read, "Mrs. Halkett Hackett, seen leaving alone, by footman at door, Dmitri and linkman, who offered to call a taxi for her. She refused and walked away. Lord Robert had not left. Captain Morris Withers, seen leaving alone by Dmitri, footman, and several members of a party whom he passed on the steps outside the house, Lord Robert at foot of stairs. Mr. Donald Potter, seen saying goodbye to Miss O'Brien by Dmitri and by two servants near door into buffet. Sir Daniel Davidson, seen leaving alone immediately after this by Dmitri and two of the servants. Miss Violet Harris, secretary to Lady Carados, seen leaving alone by cloakroom attendant standing at door unnoticed by anyone else. Mr. Trelawney Caper, young gentleman described by footman as being nicely decorated but not drunk. Lord Robert Gospell. Both footman and a linkman saw him go. Cloakroom attendant says it was about 2 minutes after Miss Harris." Alleyn looked up. "Where was Dmitri then?" "He said he went into the buffet about the time Sir Daniel left and was kept there for some time. The rest left some time after Lord Robert." "When did the Carados party go? Last of all, of course." "Yes. For all we know, it may not have been any of the guests or Dmitri." "True. All the same, it's not easy to fit an outsider into what facts we've got. An unknown in full evening dress stands outside Marsden House. He doesn't know when Lord Robert will leave, so he has to hang about for 3 hours. He doesn't know whether Lord Robert will leave in a party or alone. He doesn't know a heavy mist's going to crawl over London at 1 o'clock. I think when the murderer went out from the house, he knew that Bunchy was returning alone. He may have seen him alone in the hall. Your little list is important." The telephone rang. Alleyn answered. "Hello? Mr. Alleyn, the Yard here. Sir Daniel Davidson's rung up and says he may have something to tell you. He'll be in all day." "Say I'll call at 2 o'clock, thank him." Alleyn put the receiver down. "Have you finished here, sir?" "Yes, I got here at 5. Broke the news to Lady Mildred and settled down to Lord Robert's dressing-room, bedroom and this study. From 7 until 10 I looked in their garden and the neighbouring gardens for a cloak and a soft hat. No success. I've got a squad of men at it now." "He may not have got rid of them." "No, he may have been afraid of leaving some trace of himself. If that's the case, he'll want to destroy them. What sort of house is Dmitri's?" "A small 2-room flat in the Cromwell Road." "We'll go round there at noon when he's due at the Yard and see if we can't find anything. Fox, go and do your stuff with the maids. Don't disturb Lady Mildred, but ask for Mr. Donald's telephone number." Fox returned in a few minutes. "Sloane 8405. Alleyn reached for the telephone and dialed the number. "I want you to trace Sloane 8405 at once, please. I'll hang on." He waited. "What?" said Alleyn suddenly. "Yes, thank you. Goodbye." He put back the receiver. "Mr. Donald Potter's telephone number is that of Captain Maurice Withers, Sling Street, Chelsea. Captain Maurice Withers appears in Lord Robert's notes. He was at the cocktail party at Mrs. Halkett Hackett's. He was at the concert when Dmitri took her bag. Now look at this." Alleyn took a checkbook from the desk and handed it to Fox. "Look at the heel of the book. Turn up June 8th last Saturday." Fox found it. £50. M. Withers, D. Shackleton House, Leatherhead. Fox returned to Lord Robert's notes. "What Sissy says about Captain Withers being mixed up in a drug affair in 1924. It was rather in my salad days at the Yard, Fox, but I remember. The Bouchier-Watson lot had their headquarters at Marseille and Port Said, but they operated all over the shop, heroin mostly. The FO took a hand. Bunchy was there and helped us enormously. Captain Withers was undoubtedly up to his nasty neck in it, but we never quite got enough to pull him in. And young Donald's flown to him for sanctuary. Besotted young ninny." The door was suddenly flung open and Donald walked into the room. His eyes were bloodshot and his face pallid. "Where's my mother?" Alleyn said. "Agatha Troy's looking after her. I want to speak to you." "I want to see my mother." "You'll have to wait," said Alleyn. Donald Potter sat on a chair facing the window. Alleyn was at Lord Robert's desk. Fox sat in the window, his notebook on his knee. "When did you last speak to your uncle?" "About 10 days ago." "When did you leave this house?" "The same day," said Donald breathlessly. "What was the trouble, your debts?" "Yes." "Did he pay them?" "Yes." "Then why did you quarrel?" "He wanted me to go to Edinburgh to take my medical. I wanted to go to Thomas's." "Did you know you were acquainted with Captain Maurice Withers?" Donald darted a glance of profound astonishment at Alleyn. "He knew I was friendly with Withers, yes." "Did he object to this friendship?" "He did say something, now I come to think about it." Alleyn brought his hand down sharply on Lord Robert's cheque-book. "Then I take it you have forgotten a certain cheque for £50. A dull flush mounted to the roots of Donald's hair. "No," he said. "I remember." "Did he pay this amount to Withers on your behalf?" "Yes." "Why were you in debt to Withers? Was it a bet?" "Yes." "Horses?" "Yes," said Donald quickly. "There's something else," said Alleyn. "Donald, how else did you lose money to Captain Withers?" Donald knit his brows. "I don't know what to do," he said naively. "You have made some promise to Withers. Is that it?" "Yes." "The young men of your generation are rather bewildering. I swear I would never have been taken in by a flashy gentleman with no occupation, unless running an illicit hole-and-corner casino may be called an occupation." "I never mentioned roulette," said Donald in a hurry. "It is indeed a shame to take your money," rejoined Alleyn. Fox gave a curious little cough and turned a page of his notebook. "Very well," said Alleyn. "When did you hear of this tragedy?" "This morning, when the sporting edition came in." "Why were you so long coming here?" "I wasn't dressed, and though you may not believe it, I got a great shock when I heard of my uncle's death." "No doubt. So did your mother. I wonder she didn't ring you up." "The telephone's disconnected," said Donald. "I forgot to pay the bloody bill. Wits left it to me.
I rang her from a call box.
I see. Fox, ask one of our men to go and tell Captain Withers I shall call on him in a few minutes and will be obliged if he remains indoors. Very good, Mr. Alleyn, said Fox, and went out, coming back shortly. Now then, Alleyn continued, I understand you were among the last to leave Marsden House this morning. I want you to tell me exactly what happened just before you left.
I was with Bridget O'Brien. Uncle Bunch was there in the hall.
Did you speak to him?
No. I wish to God I had. I think I heard him asking people if they'd seen Mrs. Halkett Hackett.
Captain Withers was not at the ball?
Yes, but he'd gone. Wits was going on somewhere. He had a date.
Do you know where he went and with whom?
No.
When you left Marsden House, what did you do?
Some people were waiting outside for a taxi, asked me to go on with them to the sauce boat, but I didn't want to. I walked to the corner to look for a taxi. There wasn't one, so I walked. I was thinking about Bridget, and Uncle Bunch, and everything. Presently I was on the King's Road, so I just walked home.
Did you meet anyone?
I didn't notice.
What time did you get home?
I didn't notice.
Alleyn looked gravely at him.
I want you, please, to try very hard to remember if you met anybody on that walk, particularly just after you left Marsden House. If you are innocent, you are in no danger unless you prevaricate or shift ground, particularly in matters relating to your acquaintance with Captain Withers.
You can't suspect Withers. It's got nothing to do with him.
In that case, he has nothing to fear.
On that account, of course he hasn't. I mean... Oh, hell.
Where were you when you lost this money to him?
In a private house somewhere near Leatherhead. Shackleton House, it's called.
Was it his house?
Ask him. Why do you badger me with all of this? I can't stand any more. Let me out of this.
You may go, certainly. There will be a statement for you to sign later on. Donald got up and faced Alleyn.
I'm as anxious as you, he said, that the man should be caught. Naturally. I'm as anxious as anybody.
Good, said Alleyn.
Donald's face was puckered into the sort of grimace a small boy makes when he's trying not to cry. For some reason this gave him a strong look of his uncle. Alleyn took him roughly by the arm. There, he said, if you're innocent, you're safe. As for this other mess you've got yourself into, stick to the truth, and we'll do what we can for you. Now march. He turned Donald round, shoved him through the door, and slammed it behind him. Come on, Fox. Ring up the yard and tell them to look Withers up in the record. And if one of my men is free, send him straight off to Shackleton House, Leatherhead. The report on the post-mortem was ready. Fox took it down over the telephone, and he and Alleyn discussed it on their way to Sling Street. Dr. Curtis says there's no doubt that he was suffocated. They found Tardio's ecchymosis on the lungs and on the heart. There were also signs of fatty degeneration in the heart. They seemed to think that would make everything more rapid. Has Curtis any idea what was used? Possibly a plug of soft material introduced into the mouth and held over the nostrils. I found a trace of fine black woolen fluff in the mouth. The cloak? Looks like it. By the way, Fox, did you get a report from the PC in Belgrave Square last night? Yes. Nothing suspicious. The door of 110 was opened by Captain Withers himself. Alleyn and Fox found themselves in a mass-produced furnished sitting room. It smelt of hair-wash, cigars, and whiskey. On one wall hung a framed photograph of the sort advertised in magazines as artistic studio studies from the nude. On a table by the divan bed against the wall were 3 or 4 medical textbooks. Withers was the sort of man who breathes vulgarity. His neck was too thick, his fingers too flat and pale, and his hair shone too much, yet, in spite of these defects, he was a powerful animal. Alleyn, by contrast, looked fine-drawn, a cross between a monk and a grandee. The planes of his face and head were emphatically defined, and there was a certain austerity in the chilly blue of his eyes and in the blackness of his hair. Withers lit a cigarette, blew the smoke down his nose, and said, "What's it all about?" Fox produced his official notebook. "I want to ask you 1 or 2 questions about the early hours of this morning," Alleyn said. "When did you leave Marsden House?" "After the ball was over." "Did you leave alone?" "Yes." "Can you remember who was in the hall when you went away?" "Dan Davidson." "Is Sir Daniel Davidson a friend of yours?" Not really, I just know him. Did you notice Lord Robert in the hall as you left? Can't say I did. Did you take a taxi? No. My car was parked in Belgrave Road. Did you see any solitary man in evening dress as you walked to Belgrave Road? I don't remember. It was misty. Where did you go in your car? To the Matador. The nightclub in Sampler Street. Did you meet anybody there? Yes. May I have her name? No. I shall have to find out by the usual routine, murmured Alleyn. Make a note of it, will you, Fox? Perhaps your partner was waiting in your car, Captain Withers. Are you sure you did not drive her there? All right, said Withers. I did drive my partner to the Matador, but I shan't give you her name. Have you any medical knowledge? No. I see some textbooks over there by the bed. They don't belong to me. To Donald Potter? That's right. Do you consider that you have a strong influence over Mr. Potter? I'm not a bear leader. You prefer fleecing lambs, perhaps? Captain Withers, do you recollect the Bouchier-Watson drug-running affair of 1924? No. I'm reminded of it this morning by certain notes left by Lord Robert Gospell. He mentions the case in connection with recent information he gleaned about an illicit gambling club at Leatherhead. The coarse white hands made a convulsive movement which was immediately checked. There is only one other point, Alleyn said. I believe your telephone is disconnected. Inspector Fox, will you go to the post office at the corner? Wait a second. Alleyn took out his notebook, scribbled, "Get Thompson to tail W at once," and showed it to Fox. Give that message, will you, and see that Captain Withers' telephone is reconnected immediately. As soon as it's through, ring me here. Fox left, and Alleyn said, When your telephone is working again, I would be glad if you would ring up Mr. Donald Potter to suggest that as his mother is in great distress, you think it would be well if he stayed with her for the time being. Alleyn walked over to the divan bed and looked at the books. He ruffled the pages of a large blue volume. Here we have the fullest information on asphyxia. May I borrow this book? I'll return it to Mr. Potter. I've no objection. Splendid. Have you any objection to my looking at your dress clothes? None. Withers walked into the bedroom and Alleyn followed him. The only item of interest was a row of paper-bound banned novels of peculiar indecency and no literary merit. Withers threw a tailcoat, a white waistcoat, and a pair of trousers on the bed. Alleyn turned out the pockets, which were empty. Had you a cigarette case? He asked. Yes. May I see it? It's in the next room. Withers went into the sitting room. Alleyn, with a cat-like swiftness, looked under the bed and in at a cupboard door. Withers produced a small flat silver case. The inside lid was inscribed, Morris from Estelle. Alleyn returned it and took another from his pocket. Will you look at this, please, and tell me if you've seen it before? Withers took it. It was a thin, smooth gold case, but with a small crest in one corner. Do you know it? No. It is not Mr. Donald Potter's, for instance. Isn't his? The telephone rang in the next room. It was Fox, to say in an extremely low voice that Thompson was well on his way. Splendid. Captain Withers wanted to use it at once. Alleyn hung up the receiver and turned to Withers. Now, please, he said, telephone Mr. Potter. Withers dialed the number with bad grace. Hello, Don, it's Wits. I rang up to say I thought it might be as well if you stayed with your mother for a bit. She'll want you there with all this trouble. I'll send you things around. Yes, but listen, Wit, about the house at... Captain Withers rang off. Thank you, said Alleyn. Can you remember what Lord Robert was saying on the telephone when you walked into the room at 1 o'clock this morning? I never heard him on any telephone. Were you on the top landing near the telephone room around about 1 o'clock? The devil should I know? I was up there quite a bit. Alone? No, I was there with Don sometime during the supper dances. We were in the first sitting-out room. Old Carados was up there then. Did you hear anyone using a telephone? Fancy I did. Ah, well. That's the best we can do for the moment, I suppose, said Alleyn. By the way, would you object to my searching these rooms just to clear your good name, you know? You can crawl over them with a microscope if you like.
I see. Thank you very much. Some other time, perhaps. Good morning. Fox was waiting outside the post office. "We better take a taxi to Dmitri's," Alleyn said. "What time was he to be at the yard?" "Midday. It's 11:45. Come on." They got a taxi. "How about Withers?" asked Fox. "He's the right height to within an inch, but if he's got anything to hide, it's at the house at Leatherhead. I've got his nasty flat prints on my own cigarette case. We'll see if he's handled Donald Potter's book on medical jurisprudence, particularly the sections that deal with suffocation and asphyxia. Hello, one arrived." The taxi had pulled up at a respectable old apartment house in the Cromwell Road. Alleyn slid back the glass partition and addressed the driver. "We're police officers. In a minute or two a man will come out of this house and want a cab. Hang about for him. He will probably ask you to drive him to Scotland Yard. If he gives you any other address, I want you to write it quickly on this card while he's getting into the cab. Drop the card through the gear lever slit in the floor. Right you are, Governor. I want you to turn your car and drive 200 yards up the road and let us out. Then wait for your man. Here's your fare and all the rest of it." "Thank you, sir. OK, sir," said the taximan. He did as Alleyn had requested, and they got out. The taxi turned once more. They heard the driver's hoarse, "Taxi, sir," heard him pull up, heard the door slam, heard the cab drive away. "He hasn't dropped his card," said Alleyn, turning to stare after the taxi. "Now then, Fox, give me a few minutes in that flat and then ring up, as if from the yard, and keep Dmitri's servant on the telephone as long as possible. Then away with you to the yard. Keep Dmitri going until I come. Arrange to have him tailed when he leaves."